Time for a couple of minutes with our legal analyst, Paul Harding from Martin, Harding & Mazzotti. Hey, Paul.
Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, we wanted to talk to you, the Canadian truck driver involved in that thruway crash back in 2013 that killed Trooper David Cunniff has now been indicted and charged, and we had a bunch of questions for you. First of all, do you? I know he was in other countries involved, Canada, but do you know why it would take so long? I mean, this thing happened in 2013.
Sure did. Well, a couple things. We got to keep in mind that once these charges are filed, it does start all the speedy trial procedural clocks. They don't want time to run out and have these charges dismissed, so they're very careful in doing this. They know there's a lot of scrutiny, there's a lot of spotlight on this particular case. But, yeah, exceptionally long, much longer than anyone would have guessed. I think the reconstruction itself probably took several months. These logbooks, they wanted to make sure that they retraced the defendant's steps in terms of his recording the amount of time he rested in between his driving. But probably the thing that you touched on was probably the most significant piece. We're probably deciding whether they were going to do extradition proceedings, and that does take a bit of time, or it was going to get a voluntary surrender negotiated with the Canadian government. So put that whole thing together. It does take time, but I think most folks in the legal world were just kind of waiting and saying, what went wrong? What happened? But clearly it's done. They're moving forward, and we'll have to see where this thing goes.
Now, the question about how long he had been driving, initially it says that the limit is 14 hours. He was over by 15 minutes. But I guess we heard from one of our listeners who has a CDL, a Class A, and said that it's actually you need to be stopped for 11 hours. So they give you that little bit of a pad in there. And so he was almost like 3 hours over, not just 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that in addition to that, you have a reasonable test as to how you're feeling. You don't just keep going just because you're allowed to go that many hours, whether it's 11 or 14, and how many minutes you go over or under. At this point, we know, and we're going to hear more from him as to how it happened. But he certainly was either sleeping or was driving in a zombie state and then hit the back of that car. So, if this is tricky. People are always marking their logbooks and the drivers, and they're careful and they're doing what they can, but they're easy enough to log improperly, but then you've got the technical component in the vehicle which can verify them. So again, added to the time it took for this indictment or these charges to get filed.
Now, would it matter if the rules are different in Canada? I don't know if they have differing truck driving laws about how long they can stay on the road.
Great question. Once you come into the United States, in fact, once you go from state to state, you are required to adhere to those rules.
Now, I don't know if he has any previous transgressions, but if he had a few violations in his past unrelated to this, would that be relevant in court?
Not a whole lot, unless you had a situation where he had some kind of let's say a sleep apnea, or he had some other issues in his driving. I don't see that being a big factor here. I mean, here the trick is going to be showing that this is outside of a negligent act. I mean, clearly there's no charge here of any intentional act. We've got criminal negligence and we've got basically recklessness. And the aggravated standard is, that is in the charges has to do when there's a police officer involved. So the prosecutors are going to just need to show that this is a gross deviation from what anyone would have done, or so reckless that it does rise to the level of manslaughter. These accidents do occur where these charges are not filed as they have been here. So we'll have to wait till all the proof comes down. But this will be no easy task for the prosecutors to prove.
Hey, thanks, Paul. We appreciate it.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Our legal analyst, Paul Harding from Martin, Harding & Mazzotti, 1-800-LAW-1010.